Emma wore her dad's army jacket to school every day. The other kids laughed and called her weird. They made fun of her father who was far away fighting. But they didn't know he was a hero. Soon something amazing would happen that would change everything forever. Before watching full story, comment below from where you watching. Also like and subscribe for more stories. The morning sun cast long shadows across Riverside High's parking lot as Emma Martinez clutched her worn camouflage jacket tighter around her shoulders. The fabric was faded in places, soft from countless washes, and bore the barely visible name tape that read Martinez in block letters. It had been her father's, and wearing it made her feel like he was still with her, even though he was thousands of miles away in Afghanistan. Emma had always been different from the other kids at Riverside High. While they obsessed over designer brands and the latest trends, she found comfort in practical things. Her father's old military gear, books about aviation, and the dog-eared letters that arrived sporadically from overseas. Her classmates saw her as the weird military kid, the one who moved around too much, who never quite fit in anywhere they landed. As she walked through the main hallway that Tuesday morning, she could feel the familiar weight of stairs following her. Her combat boots made soft thuds against the polished linoleum, a rhythm that reminded her of her father's steady march around their small apartment when he was home on leave. The jacket hung loose on her small frame, but she wore it like armor against a world that seemed determined to remind her she didn't belong. "Look, it's G.I. Jane again," sneered Madison Walsh from her perch beside her locker, surrounded by her usual cluster of followers. Madison was everything Emma wasn't: blonde, perfectly dressed, and cruel in the way that only teenagers who had never faced real hardship could be. "Did you forget to check the calendar? Halloween was last month." The laughter that followed Madison's comment cut through Emma like shrapnel. She kept walking, her jaw clenched tight, trying to channel the discipline her father had taught her. "Don't let them see you break, Mija," he had told her during one of their video calls. "Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is keep moving forward." But keeping moving forward was getting harder each day. Emma slid into her seat in first period English, pulling the jacket closer as Mrs. Henderson began discussing themes of belonging in The Outsiders. The irony wasn't lost on her. Here she was, reading about kids who didn't fit in, while living that reality every single day. During lunch, Emma retreated to her usual spot in the far corner of the cafeteria, a worn paperback novel propped open beside her turkey sandwich. She had learned that if she looked busy reading, most people would leave her alone. Most people, but not all. "Hey, Army girl," called Tyler Brooks, sliding into the seat across from her uninvited. Tyler was the kind of kid who fed off attention, and Emma's quiet presence seemed to irritate him. "My dad says women don't belong in combat. Says your dad's probably over there playing dress-up instead of doing real soldier work." Emma's hands stilled on her book, the words blurring together on the page. Tyler didn't know anything about her father, didn't know about the Bronze Star medal hidden in their apartment, or the nightmares that sometimes woke him when he was home, or the way his hands shook sometimes when he thought no one was looking. "My father," Emma said quietly, not looking up from her book, "is a helicopter pilot. He saves lives." Tyler leaned back in his chair, a smirk playing across his face. "Yeah, right. I bet he flies a desk more than anything else. No wonder you dress like that, trying to be something you're not." The words hit harder than Emma expected. She closed her book carefully, gathered her things, and walked away without another word. But Tyler's laughter followed her, mixing with the whispers and giggles from nearby tables. By the time she reached her locker, the familiar sting of tears threatened to spill over. That afternoon in PE class things got worse. Coach Williams had them running laps around the football field, and Emma found herself trailing behind the pack as usual. She wasn't out of shape. Years of moving from base to base had taught her to adapt quickly, but her heart wasn't in it today. The taunts from lunch kept replaying in her mind. "Come on, soldier girl," yelled Jake Peterson from somewhere behind her. Thought military kids were supposed to be tough. Emma pushed herself harder, her father's jacket tied around her waist, bouncing with each step. She could hear the group of popular kids gaining on her, their designer athletic wear a stark contrast to her thrift store shorts and faded t-shirt. Madison appeared beside her, not even breathing hard despite running at Emma's pace. "You know," she said conversationally, "my mom works at the school district office. She says your family moves around a lot because your dad keeps getting transferred. Probably because he's not very good at his job." Emma stumbled, caught herself, and kept running. But Madison wasn't finished. "I mean, if he was really important, they'd let him stay in one place, right? Instead of dragging his weird daughter all over the country. No wonder you don't have any friends." That night, Emma sat at her small desk in their tiny apartment, staring at a half-written letter to her father. She had been trying to write to him for weeks, but every time she started, she didn't know what to say. How could she tell him that school was miserable? That she felt like she was drowning in a sea of kids who would never understand what it meant to have a parent in harm's way? That sometimes she resented the very service that made him a hero because it made her an outsider? Her mother knocked softly on her bedroom door. "Emma? Dinner's ready." "Not hungry, Mom," Emma called back, her voice muffled by the pillow she had buried her face in. The door opened anyway and her mother's footsteps crossed the room. Maria Martinez had the same dark eyes as her daughter, but they held a weariness that came from years of single parenting and sleepless nights worrying about her husband. "Rough day?" her mother asked, settling on the edge of Emma's bed. Emma turned over, still wearing her father's jacket despite being home for hours. "They don't understand, Mom. They think Dad's just playing soldier, that what he does doesn't matter. And they think I'm some kind of freak for missing him." Maria reached out and smoothed her daughter's dark hair away from her face. "Your father's been deployed for 8 months, Mija. It's okay to miss him. It's okay to be proud of him. And it's okay to be angry at kids who don't understand what sacrifice means." "But what if they're right?" Emma whispered. "What if I am just weird? What if I don't belong anywhere?" Her mother was quiet for a long moment, then stood and walked to Emma's dresser. From the top drawer she pulled out a small wooden box and brought it back to the bed. Inside were her father's medals, his dog tags, and a photograph of him standing beside a Black Hawk helicopter, his flight helmet tucked under his arm and a proud smile on his face. "Your father," Maria said softly, "is one of the best combat rescue pilots in the Army. Do you know what that means?" Emma shook her head. "It means that when other soldiers are in trouble, when they're hurt or trapped or in danger, your father is the one who flies into hostile territory to bring them home to their families. He's the one they call when hope is running out." Emma sat up, studying the photograph with new eyes. She had seen it hundreds of times, but now she noticed details she had missed before. The determination in her father's eyes, the way his crew stood around him with obvious respect, the commendation letter partially visible in his pocket. 3 weeks ago, her mother continued, your father and his crew rescued 6 soldiers from a crashed convoy. They flew through enemy fire for 45 minutes to get those boys out. One of them was 19 years old, barely older than you. Emma felt something shift inside her chest, a warmth that had nothing to do with her father's jacket. "Why didn't you tell me this before?" "Because your father doesn't do it for the recognition. He does it because it's right. And you, Emma, you wear that jacket not because you're trying to be something you're not, but because he's part of who you are. His courage, his dedication, his sacrifice, that's in your blood." The next morning, Emma dressed with more purpose than she had felt in weeks. She put on her father's jacket, laced up her combat boots, and braided her hair back in a neat military style. When she looked in the mirror, she didn't see a weird kid trying to fit in. She saw the daughter of a hero. At school, the familiar routine of whispers and stares began almost immediately. But something was different today. Emma held her head higher, her shoulders straighter. When Madison made a snide comment about playing Army, Emma simply looked at her with steady eyes and kept walking. During third period, Emma was called to the principal's office. As she walked down the empty hallway, her mind raced through possibilities. Had someone complained about her attitude? Was she in trouble for the confrontation with Tyler yesterday? Principal Johnson was waiting for her with an expression she couldn't read. "Emma, please sit down. I have someone on the phone who wants to speak with you." Confused, Emma took the offered phone. "Hello? Emma? Baby girl, it's Dad." Her father's voice, clear and strong despite the distance, made her knees weak with relief. She hadn't heard from him in 2 weeks, and the silence had been harder than usual. "Dad, are you okay? Is everything?" "Everything's fine, Mija. I'm calling because I have some news. My unit is being rotated home earlier than expected. I'll be back in the States next week." Emma felt tears spring to her eyes, but for the first time in months, they were tears of joy. "Really? You're coming home?" "More than that," her father said, and she could hear the smile in his voice. "I'm being stationed at Fort Campbell for the next 2 years. No more moving around, Emma. We're going to stay put for a while." The news was almost too good to believe. 2 years in one place meant she could actually make friends, join clubs, maybe even try out for the track team. It meant stability in a way she had never known. "There's something else," her father continued. "I've been following your school's social media page, and I saw that you guys have a big homecoming game this Friday. I was wondering if you'd like me to stop by." Emma's heart swelled. "You want to come to my school?" "I want to meet the kids who've been getting to know my incredible daughter." Maybe give a little talk about what we do over here if your principal is interested." Principal Johnson, who had been listening to one side of the conversation, nodded enthusiastically. "We'd be honored to have him visit," he said loud enough for her father to hear. The rest of the week passed in a blur of anticipation. Emma found herself looking forward to Friday with an excitement she hadn't felt in years. She still endured the usual comments about her appearance, but they seemed smaller now, less important. Soon everyone would understand. Friday afternoon arrived gray and overcast, with thick clouds that threatened rain but never quite delivered. The homecoming game against the Riverside Ravens was set to begin at 7, but Emma arrived at school early to help set up for her father's presentation. Principal Johnson had arranged for him to speak to the school during the extended lunch period, right before the pep rally. As students filed into the gymnasium, Emma stood near the back, her father's jacket pristine and pressed. She had spent the morning polishing his medals, which she now wore pinned to the jacket with his permission. Her hands shook slightly with nervous energy. Madison and her friends clustered near the front, as always claiming the best seats. Emma overheard Madison telling someone, "I heard some soldier is coming to talk to us. Probably just recruitment propaganda. So lame." At exactly 12:30, Principal Johnson stepped up to the microphone. "Students, we have a very special guest with us today. Staff Sergeant Miguel Martinez is a combat rescue pilot with the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment, currently serving his third deployment in Afghanistan. He's also the father of one of your classmates, Emma Martinez." A murmur went through the crowd as heads turned to look at Emma. She felt her cheeks burn but kept her eyes focused on the gymnasium doors, waiting for her father to appear. And then he was there. Staff Sergeant Miguel Martinez walked into the gymnasium in his dress uniform, and Emma felt her breath catch. She had forgotten how commanding he looked in formal military attire, the crisp lines of his jacket, the precise placement of his medals and ribbons, the confident way he carried himself. But more than that, she saw the way the room fell completely silent, the way even the most disrespectful students sat up straighter in his presence. "Good afternoon," her father said into the microphone, his voice carrying easily to every corner of the room. "My name is Miguel Martinez and I'm honored to be here with you today." He spoke for 20 minutes about service, about the importance of education, about the young men and women he served alongside who were barely older than the students in front of him. He talked about courage, not the Hollywood version but the quiet, everyday kind that meant doing what was right even when it was difficult. "My daughter Emma," he said, looking directly at her across the crowded gymnasium, "wears my old flight jacket to school. Some of you might think that's strange, or that she's trying to be something she's not. But I want you to know that when she puts on that jacket, she's carrying the weight of every mission I've flown, every soldier I've brought home, every family that's been reunited because of the work we do. She carries that weight with grace and dignity, even when it's hard." Emma felt tears streaming down her face, but she didn't care who saw them. Around her, she could see her classmates looking at her with new eyes. Not the weird military kid but the daughter of someone who mattered. "The jacket she wears," her father continued, "has been with me through 47 combat missions. It's been in the cockpit when we've flown through sandstorms and enemy fire to reach soldiers who needed help. It's lucky and it's special, and now it protects my daughter the same way it protected me." When the presentation ended, the applause was thunderous. But Emma barely heard it. She was focused on making her way through the crowd to her father, who met her halfway and swept her into a crushing hug. "I'm so proud of you, Mija," he whispered in her ear. "So proud of how strong you've been." Later that evening, as the homecoming game was about to begin, Emma found herself surrounded by classmates who suddenly wanted to know more about her life, her father's service, what it was like being a military kid. Even Madison approached her during halftime, looking uncharacteristically subdued. "I owe you an apology," Madison said quietly. "I didn't understand. I never thought about what it means to have a parent deployed." Emma nodded, accepting the apology with more grace than Madison probably deserved. "It's okay. Most people don't understand." The game was in its final quarter when Emma heard it, a distant thumping sound that made her look up at the cloudy night sky. At first she thought it might be thunder but the rhythm was too regular, too mechanical. Then she saw the lights. A Black Hawk helicopter emerged from the low-hanging clouds, its navigation lights blinking red and green against the gray sky. The aircraft circled the football field once, then twice before beginning a careful descent toward the center of the field. The crowd went silent, then erupted in chaos as everyone stood and pointed at the sky. The helicopter touched down gently on the 50-yard line, its rotor still spinning, creating a windstorm that sent napkins and programs flying throughout the stands. Emma's father appeared beside her, grinning widely. "Surprise?" he said over the noise of the rotors. "I brought some friends." The helicopter's engines wound down, and the pilot's door opened. Out stepped a woman in a flight suit, her helmet tucked under her arm, moving with the same confident bearing as Emma's father. Behind her came the crew chief and co-pilot, all of them scanning the crowd with professional alertness even in this safe environment. "Emma," her father said, "I'd like you to meet Chief Warrant Officer Sarah Chin, my co-pilot." "Sarah, this is my daughter." Chief Chin extended her hand to Emma with a warm smile. "Your dad talks about you constantly. All good things, I promise." Emma shook the woman's hand, still in shock. "You flew all the way here just for a football game?" "Actually," Chief Chin said, "we were conducting a training exercise at Fort Campbell and your dad asked if we could make a little detour. Turns out the Army likes good public relations opportunities." The crowd was still buzzing with excitement, everyone trying to get closer to the helicopter and its crew. Emma watched her classmates' faces, saw the awe and respect in their eyes, and realized that something fundamental had shifted. These were the same kids who had mocked her jacket, who had questioned her father's service, who had made her feel like an outsider. Now they were seeing exactly what it meant to be the daughter of someone who flew these machines into danger. Tyler Brooks appeared at her elbow, looking sheepish. "Emma, I wanted to say I'm sorry. About what I said at lunch the other day. I didn't know your dad was a pilot. That's actually really cool." Emma looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. "He is pretty cool," she agreed. As the crew prepared to depart, Emma's father pulled her aside. "I have to go back with them tonight," he said. "But I'll be home for good in 10 days. And Emma, I want you to keep wearing that jacket. You've earned it." Emma hugged him tightly, breathing in the familiar scent of aviation fuel and aftershave that always clung to his uniform. "I love you, Dad." "I love you too, baby girl. Take care of your mom for me." The Black Hawk lifted off into the night sky as dramatically as it had arrived, its lights disappearing into the clouds until only the fading sound of rotors remained. The football game resumed, but nobody was really watching anymore. Everyone was talking about the helicopter, about Emma's father, about the incredible thing they had just witnessed. As Emma walked home with her mother after the game, she felt different. The jacket that had once made her feel like an outsider now felt like a badge of honor. She understood now that being different wasn't something to hide from, it was something to embrace. "How do you feel?" her mother asked as they reached their apartment complex. Emma looked up at the sky, where her father was flying somewhere in the darkness, and smiled. "I feel like I belong," she said. The following Monday, Emma walked into Riverside High with her head held high. She wore her father's jacket, her combat boots, and a confidence that hadn't been there before. The whispers and stares were still there, but they had changed. Instead of mockery, she heard curiosity. Instead of exclusion, she found acceptance. During lunch, instead of sitting alone in the corner, Emma found herself at a table full of kids asking questions about military life, about her father's service, about what it was like to move around so much. She answered their questions honestly, sharing stories she had never told anyone before. Madison approached her table hesitantly. "Emma, could I sit with you guys?" Emma looked up at the girl who had tormented her for months, saw something different in her expression, humility maybe or genuine curiosity, and nodded toward an empty chair. As the weeks passed and her father's return date grew closer, Emma began to understand something important. She had always thought that belonging meant fitting in, meant being like everyone else. But watching her classmates' faces when her father spoke, seeing their respect and admiration, she realized that belonging meant being valued for who you were, not despite it. Her father's jacket wasn't just a piece of clothing, it was a symbol of service, sacrifice, and strength. When she wore it, she wasn't trying to be someone else. She was honoring the best parts of who she already was. The day her father finally came home for good, Emma met him at the airport wearing his jacket one last time. As he swept her into his arms, she made a decision. "Dad," she said, "I think it's time for you to have this back." He looked down at her, surprised. "Are you sure, Mija? I gave it to you." Emma smiled, feeling more confident than she ever had before. "I don't need it anymore. I know who I am now." Her father nodded, understanding passing between them. "Then my job is done," he said. Tyler Brooks appeared at her elbow, looking sheepish. "Emma, I wanted to say I'm sorry. About what I said at lunch the other day. I didn't know your dad was a pilot. That's actually really cool." Emma looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. "He is pretty cool," she agreed. As the crew prepared to depart, Emma's father pulled her aside. I have to go back with them tonight, he said. But I'll be home for good in 10 days. And Emma? I want you to keep wearing that jacket. You've earned it. Emma hugged him tightly, breathing in the familiar scent of aviation fuel and aftershave that always clung to his uniform. I love you, Dad. I love you too, baby girl. Take care of your mom for me. The Black Hawk lifted off into the night sky as dramatically as it had arrived, its lights disappearing into the clouds until only the fading sound of rotors remained. The football game resumed, but nobody was really watching anymore. Everyone was talking about the helicopter, about Emma's father, about the incredible thing they had just witnessed. As Emma walked home with her mother after the game, she felt different. The jacket that had once made her feel like an outsider now felt like a badge of honor. She understood now that being different wasn't something to hide from, it was something to embrace. How do you feel? Her mother asked as they reached their apartment complex. Emma looked up at the sky, where her father was flying somewhere in the darkness, and smiled. I feel like I belong, she said. The following Monday, Emma walked into Riverside High with her head held high. She wore her father's jacket, her combat boots, and a confidence that hadn't been there before. The whispers and stares were still there, but they had changed. Instead of mockery, she heard curiosity. Instead of exclusion, she found acceptance. During lunch, instead of sitting alone in the corner, Emma found herself at a table full of kids asking questions about military life, about her father's service, about what it was like to move around so much. She answered their questions honestly, sharing stories she had never told anyone before. Madison approached her table hesitantly. Emma? Could I sit with you guys? Emma looked up at the girl who had tormented her for months, saw something different in her expression, humility maybe or genuine curiosity, and nodded toward an empty chair. As the weeks passed and her father's return date grew closer, Emma began to understand something important. She had always thought that belonging meant fitting in, meant being like everyone else. But watching her classmates' faces when her father spoke, seeing their respect and admiration, she realized that belonging meant being valued for who you were, not despite it. Her father's jacket wasn't just a piece of clothing, it was a symbol of service, sacrifice, and strength. When she wore it, she wasn't trying to be someone else. She was honoring the best parts of who she already was. The day her father finally came home for good, Emma met him at the airport wearing his jacket one last time. As he swept her into his arms, she made a decision. Dad, she said, I think it's time for you to have this back. He looked down at her, surprised. Are you sure, Mija? I gave it to you. Emma smiled, feeling more confident than she ever had before. I don't need it anymore. I know who I am now. Her father nodded, understanding passing between them. Then my job is done, he said.